The WSL is on the verge of making the biggest mistake in its history. In this video, we discuss the plans to make the WSL a closed league, we look at why the league's organisers want to do this, and discuss how this would taint the tradition of women's football in England forever. These are our thoughts on the WSL's closed league proposal. Alright, let's get into it then. Today we're going to be discussing the WSL and the proposal for it to become a closed league. Let's start by talking about what the actual idea is then, because I think a lot of people are banding around this idea that there'll be no promotion, no relegation, there'll be just no competition anymore. I think it's important to dig into what the actual plan is here that the WPLL have proposed. So from the 26-27 season, so not next season, but the season after that, if my maths doesn't fail me, there'll be no relegation from the WSL into what will be now known as the WSL 2, which I have a problem with in and of itself, but we'll get to problems in a moment. There'll be no relegation from the WSL into the second division, but there will still be promotion from the Championship or WSL 2 to the WSL, which will then mean that for 4 years it'll be a closed league from 26-27 to the 2030 season, and in that time the WSL will build it up from 12 teams to 16 teams, and then they will reopen negotiations on whether it will be an open or closed league. Now the problems with this, of course, are that I mean, there's numerous, and we'll get onto those. But it's one that's caused a lot of debate, a lot of conversation online. This will be set to a vote amongst the WSL and the Women's Championship clubs at the end of April. And if they get a 2/3 majority, then this will go through. So obviously now, a lot of people voicing their concerns with it. It's good to see that, because I'm not sure this is the answer. Why do the WPLL want to do it though, Harry?
Well, it's one of Nikki Doucette's and the WPL's wacky ideas they love to just keep rolling out and proposing over the last couple of months. But I do understand it slightly from their point of view that it's
it makes sense for the club.
Oh yeah, well yeah, but it's going to build the league, which is very, very strong. It would make the league bigger, and it would, as you say, massively help the clubs, because it would rely. There's no threat there. It's like, if they have a bad season, they go nowhere. They're still here, so it definitely helps them out in that case. But I think it's an idea that definitely, as you say, it has to be explained. It has to be explored further, because that initial statement makes the idea sound much worse than I think the actual proposal is.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think when everyone puts together just that WSL's a closed league, this is going to be terrible. Yes, it looks a lot worse. I still don't necessarily agree with the plan, but I think it is a lot better than it could be. I think the biggest argument against it is obviously the fact that this could be a slippery slope. If we close the league now, will it ever be reopened? That would be my biggest concern with it. I mean, there's numerous. We'll get on to those. But why does WPL want to do it? Well, it does benefit the clubs. It gives them stability, staying in the top flight. It gives them that financial security. They know that if they invest, they're going to still be in the WSL. So investing will, in theory, the plan from them is that if the clubs keep investing, they could push up the league. And so their thoughts, the organisers' thoughts, is that then the owners will invest more, because they know that they will stay in the league. So it's not like they're going to lose money. So they have that sort of guaranteed competition money. They have that guaranteed television money, and so they're happy with that. And then this investment, the WPLL believes, will bring competition closer together, because the clubs at the bottom will all invest loads of money, and then everyone will be equal, apparently.
I like the positivity and the belief in football club owners that would happen. And I rate the as I say, the ambition that the clubs would do that, but I just don't see that being a reality. If you tell a load of football club owners that there's there's not much competition, there's no threat of them getting relegated or losing their money, then why would they bother investing? Because the only reason owners are investing right now towards the back end of the WSL is because they want to keep their club in the top league. But if there's no relegation, then why would they invest? I don't think the owners, FSG and the likes, are sitting there thinking, well, hang on a minute. Now I'm not going to get relegated. Let me throw loads and loads more money into it so I can challenge.
It's a very American sports approach, and I get it, because Doucette is Canadian and the WPLL, they're coming across into English football when they want to grow the league. But I don't think the American way is the way, because there is a very different culture around sports in England. One is the infrastructure and the setup of the whole country in terms of youth development is completely different to the US. In the US, you play your college football right up until you're like 18, 19, and then you get drafted. And that's not the case here in England. So in the US, the draft works because the closed league works because of the draft.
Yeah.
So the bottom team can then pick the best players, and so suddenly you create competition across the league. That isn't the case in England. In England, we have youth academy setups, so the clubs will have their own youth players. They'll develop them through the years, and then bring them into the first team setup. So that difference in how it works and how the setup of the entire country works makes it very difficult to have a closed league because those clubs at the bottom aren't ever going to think, oh yeah, we're going to topple Chelsea.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't work in the same way. Chelsea will, if West Ham have one good academy product, Chelsea will have 10 at the same level. Yeah. And that's the difference at the moment between those clubs. Chelsea can invest a lot more than West Ham can, so that gap's just never going to be closed just by not relegating anyone. And so I just think, the fact is the setup is very different. The culture's very different as well. English football's built on a tradition of having this football pyramid, which you can go up and down from, and it's that belief for clubs at the bottom of the pyramid that you could go right up to the top that spurs them to keep going. And again, they don't have that in America. There's just have loads of different leagues with the same sort of setups. So, I think though it's really important for the tradition and the sanctity of English football that we keep relegation and promotion open. Yeah. I think even closing it for 4 years, it taints that tradition that is so important, I think, to English football. And if we are looking at creating a game that is more similar to the men's game, and there are aspects obviously that we don't want to replicate, and there are going to be nuances with the women's game, but I think if we are getting a game that is closer to that in terms of its professionalism, if you look at the success of the Premier League, that's where the WSL want to be. I think that going to a closed league is a huge step in the other direction. It's a huge step towards the Americanization of the league in terms of making it more about the entertainment rather than about sporting integrity.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where, as you say, I think that the difference as well, but I like the fact that in Europe we have that difference to America. America has the closed league system. We have all our leagues open, and I like that difference. That's what makes the WSL and the NWSL different. It makes it feels like they are different competitions. If not, they get very similar. I think as well. I understand obviously from the WPL's point of view why there is so much focus going into the WSL and the Women's Championship, and why they want to change the name of it, because that's where that's where the biggest money is. But the problem is, if you close off the WSL and you only focus on those two leagues, you're going to end up just killing the rest of the football period. And the women's national leagues and all the leagues below that won't stand a chance. Because unless one of those clubs puts in a hell of a lot of money, they're not going to get anywhere near those two top leagues.
And this is the concerning thing as well that's come out of all of this. Is WPLL has been in talks with the other men's Premier League clubs to push their women's team through the pyramid, which again completely defeats the object of football. Like that would be, it would ruin sporting integrity if you just push them right up into the championship. So I think proposals like that are utterly bizarre. And as you say, I think it's really important that we still have that progression. You know, at the moment you've got #United and Ipswich Town in the Women's National League that are right there, competing for that top spot, and it's really close between them. Fantastic title battle this year. And if one of those gets into the championship, that's a huge moment for those clubs. Yeah. And so I think it's so important that we keep that pyramid open. I do think something needs to be done. Because that's the thing from all of this. The WPL are doing this because they recognise that they do need to create more competition in the league. Which in the same title winner now in Chelsea for the last 5 times in a row, and it looks like they're going to make it a 6th time in a row. The last 2 promoted sides from the championship have been relegated immediately back down to the championship. If Crystal Palace go down this year. Yeah. And obviously Reading was a different situation because they had financial difficulties. But last year's Bristol City, it looks like it'll be Crystal Palace this year again. And I think with only 1 promotion, 1 relegation, there's just not enough movement. And there's still only 12 clubs in the top flight. Yeah. And so I think there is something that needs to be done. I'm not sure, though, that it is to relegate nobody and just promote 1. Yeah. I think it would make more sense to relegate 1 and promote 2. Yeah. I think we should be promoting more teams, not the same amount, and just not relegating everyone. There still needs to be that jeopardy. Because for me, as much as the WPLL think owners will invest, I think if you are Everton, Leicester, West Ham, Palace, Tottenham, the clubs that are in that bottom half of the table in the WSL right now, I think those clubs would just cut investment as much as possible because they know they'll stay in the league. Yeah. And so they'll just enjoy the competition money, they'll enjoy the television money. I don't think it would enhance competition at all. because I love this fairy tale idea that they'll all decide, oh, we've got to be competitive with the big guys, but I don't think they'll do that. I think they'll just be happy with the security that the league offers, knowing they can't get relegated means that they don't have to invest, not the other way around. So I think it would really damage the league. I think it'd have the inverse impact that WPLL envision.
The way to make leagues more competitive is to refresh the teams, bring the teams around. You look at it in any other leagues. The way teams will survive relegation one season, and then the reason they go down the next is because a new team has come up and caused issues and has brought competition. And you take this season, for example, that we're currently going to have potentially going into next season. Say you relegated one and two got promoted at the end of this campaign, you'd have Crystal Palace right now will be going down, and you'd have Birmingham and London City Lionesses coming up. Those two would come in and they would ruffle a few feathers, and then suddenly you'd get a lot more competition. And I do agree that I think that even if you close the league and only promote one, that doesn't solve the problem of teams get that bottleneck that builds up in the Women's Championship. Because at the end of this season, only one of Birmingham, London City Lionesses, Bristol City, and all the other teams in that fight can go up. And I think the London City Lionesses and Birmingham are the big two for me, because they are investing a lot of money right now.
Tom Brady and Michelle Kang.
And one of them will still be in the Women's Championship next season.
Yeah.
That is absolutely absurd.
And in the Championship, you've got Durham, who've been brilliant this season, but they don't have the same finance as those top two clubs. But they would, if we had the playoff system, which is being spoken about as well in the Championship, if we had that player system, they'd be there. They'd have a chance to compete against these sides and get up. Newcastle, another one with huge investment there, could be getting up into the WSL in the next few years. So I think the way you create more competition is by creating more jeopardy, not none.
Yeah.
And so I think, that is the way football works. And so for me, I would expand the league. I think it's got to get to 16 teams by 2030. That is the overall plan. For me, I could see it as more than 16 teams by 2030. I think we've got enough clubs now that are coming through. Definitely in the Championship. The big question for me remains over the pyramid, whether we can fill those gaps in the pyramid, whether clubs will shuffle up successfully or whether that will be too damaging. But there is definitely sides now that we could get to 16 teams. Sorry.
The thing that gives me that I find really positive, as you say, the question would be if the top of the pyramid goes up, will the rest of it follow? The thing that the big one for me that says it would is because if you look at the sides in the Women's National League, obviously I know some of them are they are individual clubs, but you've got the likes of Nottingham Forest down there, Ipswich Town, Stoke. We are talking; these are Premier League and Championship clubs, so they're not lacking money. I can tell you right now that the Forest and Ipswich owners aren't lacking money, and that's why those two teams are right up at the top of their league.
Hashtag United as well. I mean, huge investment there from that.
And this is why the league has to extend, because next season, say London City Lionesses get promoted to the Championship, to the WSL. Palace get relegated. Next season, we could have a Women's Championship that includes Birmingham, Palace, Ipswich, Nottingham Forest, Newcastle. Hashtag. We're looking at all of those teams have got what it takes to get into WSL.
But also, I think if London City Lionesses go up next season, I have no idea who'd go down from the WSL.
Because
that creates the jeopardy.
Yeah, exactly.
Because then suddenly you've got Aston Villa, who have been really close this season, but they'll be desperate not to go down. So then they have to invest.
Yeah.
West Ham, who will be desperate not to go down, they have to invest. Tottenham, I think, will be worried, looking over their shoulder. Leicester will be worried. And so what do those clubs do? They invest. And that is what happens when relegation is there as that jeopardy, because that will happen next season. And I think the WPL have got to be really mindful of that. I think if they close the league, they're going to have a lot of complaints from the fans in their hands. I wouldn't be surprised if the clubs are in favour, because in theory it does benefit the clubs. But I think the fans who care about the sport, who care about the integrity of football, will be up in arms against it. And we've already seen a petition that came out on Monday morning, which at the time of recording has 350 signatures. I wouldn't be surprised if that is significantly higher by the time this video goes out. A lot of that is being now shared a lot quicker than it was on Monday. So there's already quite a vocal opposition about it. We've seen on social media people not happy about the plans. So yeah, I think it's going to be a very controversial one. I still think it's one that's going to be discussed over the next few months. We know that date at the end of April is coming up where they'll vote on it. I just don't think they can do it. No. I think it'd be really bad.
Because and obviously some people will say, okay, we're talking about it would if you don't close it off, we are going to get a fight at the bottom. But what about at the top? But for me, as you said, I mean, if London City Analysis come up, I genuinely believe Michelle Kang will put enough money into it that they will be right at the sharp end of the league in the next 5 years. And that is, I can really see that happening. Same with Birmingham. And as you said,
I think it's because London City Lions have the advantage of not being connected to a men's club.
Yeah.
So everything they make is reinvested into the club. All of the focus at the club is on that team. And they're looking at building their own stadium and having the first specific women's football stadium in England, which is really, really important.
Fighting Brighton for that one.
Yeah, Brighton are also doing that. I wouldn't be surprised if Michelle Kang gets done in half the time.
It's a race.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens there. But I think that looking at the sides that could come up from the Championship, they're going to come in and compete, and they're going to force clubs to spend to then avoid being relegated.
Yeah.
My other problem with it is I would hate to see a WSL where we have an odd number. Because a team just not playing every weekend, and then the thing that does the table would really annoy me, just on a personal level. So please don't do it, Nick.
You can't have a 13 or a 15 team league for a year.
Exactly, and I think so. Perhaps sending, however you're going to do it, it's going to need thinking. But I don't think it's just relegate nobody, send one up.
We need more teams. The league has to expand, but don't expand it by just taking it'd be kind of like just a 5-year break from competition to build the league and then just get back to it in 2030. But by the time you get back to it in 2030, you'd have missed out on a loads of
But also, talking theoretically, if it doesn't work how they intend, then Chelsea could have built a real dynasty in that time and be on a decade straight of WSL wins. So, and then you get to 2030 and it's like, well, what have we achieved?
And the other risk with it would be is that they seem to have a lot of things that are ending in 2030, and that would be very risky because you've got the broadcast deal that ends in 2030, and obviously if they close the league, that would end. You suddenly and as you say, if they decide to everyone's all the contracts kind of things around the league at the end of 2030, if Chelsea do dominate the league, then you've got to be careful that the broadcasters don't go, well, what's the point? Because
if there's no relegation, I could see the last 2 months of the season. Like, imagine if look at this season, for example. I think if the table stays as it is and Chelsea stay clear at the top and Palace don't get any closer in the relegation fight, the last game is going to be practically pointless.
Yeah.
Because everything's going to be decided apart from the European spots. But nobody watches the league to see who finishes third and fourth every year. That's not enough of a draw. So there's got to be more competition. There's got to be jeopardy at the bottom. That I think that once there's 16 teams, there's got to be more going down. There's got to be more coming up, and there's got to be more fluidity and more movement between those two leagues, not less.
Yeah.
So that's really important. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But yeah, I'm sure you guys have a lot of thoughts. So get involved in the comments down below. Give us your thoughts on the proposal. Of course, if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. But that does round up everything we are going to talk about today. Another video on screen now if you want to go and check that out. But thank you guys very, very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.